Welcome into Kitchen Talk Pickleball Edition. I'm your host, Caitlin Miller, and this week we have two guests joining us, and that's Dayne Gingrich and Jill Martin. Dayne is a mental performance and pickleball coach and a top senior pro, and Jill is an attorney turned personal trainer, yoga teacher, and pickleball fanatic. Now, you guys have a great relationship, also have a book coming out in the next few months. So, talk to me a little bit about how you two met and how this all got started.
So you want me to take it? I'll take it. She looked at me. I'll take it.
I love it.
So it was interesting. First off, thank you so much for having us. Your show is phenomenal, super professional. We couldn't be more humbled to be here. Number one.
Thank you.
To your question, I had Jill in a clinic one day, and I told this story a bunch, but within 5 minutes, she was at the kitchen line and she did some weird pose to reach in the kitchen and extend way out there that I now know as like the warrior, right? And she was super on balance and she was super like strong. And I stopped the clinic. And I said, I want that. What do you do? And she said, she's a trainer and she did yoga. And I said, I need that. And so we met on the pickleball court, and we met in school. My daughter goes to school with her son, but she eventually landed on my pickleball court, and I saw how strong she was and how balanced and flexible. And I just said, hey, can I get some of that? And then it just kind of turned into where I started coaching her and she started training me. And then all of a sudden this freaking crazy book thing happened.
I love that. And yes, so this book coming out in a few months, it's called Pickleball Mindset. I know it kind of shares the relationship between a coach and an athlete. Talk to me a little bit about your roles, your background, and why, this type of relationship is so important in any sport, but particularly with pickleball.
Well, so Dayne mentioned that we met on the court, and when I started training him, he was helping me with some mental performance issues and just generally pickleball stuff. And I came to realize that my mental performance was what was really holding me up and progressing on the court. And I'm in my former life as an attorney, I was a litigator. And so I'm pretty used to kind of putting people through their paces and asking a lot of questions and approaching things with skepticism. And so a lot of times when Dayne would tell me strategies, I was like, I don't know about that. I don't know if that's going to work for me. Like that might work for you. I don't see how this is applicable to me, and would really ask a ton of questions. And we did a lot of it on text. And in my life as an attorney, I really focused on writing and creating arguments through like in legal briefs. And so at some point I was like, what are we doing? We need to write. This should be a book. Like our texts already are a book, because I would just always like everything he would answer, I would like follow up, but this, but that, but this. And so
she didn't believe a word of it. She didn't believe anything.
Skeptical about everything.
And so that's kind of how we started to think about writing a book. And then I guess, well, what do you think?
It was crazy because I've been trying to write a book for 10 years, literally. And I just would start, stop. And I just didn't have the time and I didn't have the discipline. And when she said it, it was so strange because she said it and I stopped and I said, yes, let's do it, without having any idea whether it was a good idea, a bad idea, whether we could even finish it. But something in my gut just said, based on kind of what she said about how much we were texting and talking about mental performance and what she was struggling with. And then based on kind of like what she was teaching me often on the court as well with my own fitness stuff, something just said this was going to work. And I was just talking to my daughter this morning as I dropped her off. I said, hey, sweetheart, this thing's coming out in like first week of April. Did you believe it would? And she said, no, like it was never going to happen. My wife said, no, you've been trying. So just in my gut, I just knew that this thing would happen. And here we are. I got to say, this book is really good. And I got to also say, but I'm going to say it like this, because of her. Like, this book is good because of her role in the book, my mental strategies, but she makes them come to life. And she is so much of the audience that we are wanting to present it to. Like, she is the reason this book is going to be a good seller.
Well, I think that like one of the interesting parts for me about the process and how we came to even think about doing it as part of our like discussing our coaching relationship is that we spent a whole lot of time arguing the first year about generally arguing, but like one of the many things we argued about was what ultimately the book would be about. And I pushed pretty hard that this was going to be his book and that I would be a ghostwriter. And that because I enjoyed writing and he was busy with all the different things he was doing, that I would basically collect his strategies. And he's written a ton over the last 30 years, that I would read everything he wrote and kind of do what I did as a litigator, like gather all the information, organize it, make it into a story. And he pushed back pretty hard, like, no, like you need to be part of this too. And your process needs to be part of it. And this took, I've summarized this into 90 seconds, but this like was strung out over a year of me often being like, you know what, I'm just going to delete my half of the book. And he'd be like, wait. And I like held the document. So I did have that power. And I'd be like, I could just like do like a control find Jill and just like take it out. And he kind of persuaded me through his coaching experiences that all the things that felt like particular and like individual struggles for me was what he experienced with athletes all the time. And so, because I questioned a lot, like, well, I'm not sure how my experience is relevant to anyone else's, but he saw through coaching people through 30 years that it was the things that I struggled with were really common. I mean, they might look a little different in the details, but that ultimately it was what both amateurs and professionals struggle with in trying to kind of get a more confident mindset on the court.
And I think that's what's so unique. Like, I honestly love reading all those like psychology books and like, top 10 things you need to do to become successful, like all that stuff. But it's always like someone, preaching like you need to do this, this, and this. And I think that's what's really interesting about this book that you both have coming out. It's just the fact that like you're putting reality, you have a character. And I feel like being able to empathize with someone actually going through those experiences makes it so like nice for us as the audience reading it. And it seems like the book's very honest too, right? Like you're very open about the hardships mentally that you face on the pickleball court.
And I think that's the biggest point right there, as you said, right? You're right. Like I didn't want to lecture. I didn't want to preach and just do this and do that. Like, who cares? There's a ton of books like that. I wanted to bring in a real life experience, like you said, and the vulnerabilities and really kind of opening up her pain points and her struggles and her celebrations. And, and she's an incredible writer and super funny. Like there's a lot of funny spots in there. And it's obvious we argue a lot. And she didn't believe a lot of things that I would present. I.e. the chapter on slumps. I don't believe in them. And she lost her mind with that one. But I think the whole point of it is like, this is a real life experience. It's not just strategies and techniques. It's those, but you get to see a day in the life of somebody for literally over a year and a half going through what I think most people believe they only go through on their own, right? They only struggle on their own. They only feel fear and doubt. Nobody feels the same fear and doubt and skepticism and all of that and the stress and the nerves. No one believes like anyone feels it but them, right? And so right. Jill kind of shows that, hey, like we all are doing it. We all go through it. And this is how I struggled through it. And here's how I celebrated out of it. And what works for me may or may not work for you. But like, let me just show you a year and a half of going from a 3.5 to literally a 4.5 today, although she says, no, I'm only a 4.0. But I mean, the level of improvement just in the confidence is what we wanted to share. And I think a lot of people will resonate with that.
I agree. And I think, pickleball is a sport because it's so new. People, picked up later in their lives. Like a lot of people grew up maybe playing soccer, basketball, where it's not so reliant on like one person. It's literally either you on the court or you and someone else. And so you have a lot of pressure, and you can definitely, like, when I see someone mentally struggling as my opponent, I'm like, let's go, just aim for that person, like capitalize on that. So I think with pickleball, especially, it is so important to be mentally tough just as much as it is physically, if not actually more important. What are some of the things, and I know, Dayne, you have a huge following with mental performance. What are some of the biggest challenges you see with your clients and players with the pickleball?
It's everybody's so different with that, but I think if I were to generalize, definitely fear, right? Like the fear of fill in the blank, the fear of not performing, the fear in letting my partner down, the fear in what if I don't succeed in the goals that I set, right? I think we step on the court first and foremost until we train ourselves out of it with, I hope I don't, right? I got to try not to, right? I've been doing clinics or lessons, or I've been reading books, and I have to eliminate my unforced errors, which is just another way of saying, I hope I don't miss. Right. And so, but that's the default of the mind. The mind will not default to, let's intentionally do this. Let's intentionally focus on this. It defaults, if you don't train it, to, I hope I don't miss, because it's trying to protect you from the pain. But by protecting you from the, I hope I don't miss, it's actually creating more misses, which just then perpetuates this brutal cycle of fear, errors, self-doubt, self-fulfilling prophecy, self-fulfilling belief of, see, I told you so. And then it just keeps going around and around. And I think there's an illusion that if we physically drill, we can drill ourselves out of that mentality. And that just straight is false. We can get a little better. We can improve our confidence a tiny bit better. But until you've succeeded in the big stressful moments, because you've trained yourself into those moments, you can never fully believe in yourself. Because I do not believe, it's one of my bigger pet peeves, fake it till you make it. The brain knows when you're faking it. You can't fake it. You can't fake belief. Right. You can't fake confidence. You have to train yourself into those. But as you'll read in the book, like, it's super slow process. And, people don't want the slow process. They want it microwave right now, 15-second, 30-second popcorn. Let's eat it. Like, they don't want to go through the grind and the pain of what it takes to really become mentally tough. So, I would say fear, right? I hope I don't.
I was going to ask, are there a few exercises that people can do now that you'd recommend, or is it something that you really have to do like very little at a time?
Yes and no. I think for everybody, yes, you have to do a little bit at a time. But where I like to start players is to reverse engineer from, like, what does he or she look like? Like, it doesn't matter the micro drills I give you or the techniques if you don't know the person that you're trying to become, right? Not the goals you're trying to achieve, but what does that player look like when you, quote, improve, when you get to that spot, right? Not the top of the mountain. There's no finish line, but like, always reverse engineering. And this is the only stock thing I do for everyone, whether it's a 3-5-4-0 amateur or a 7-0 pro, is we can't move on until you know exactly what you want to look like, feel like, walk like, talk like, breathe like. Before they walk onto the court, they see your name in a bracket. What do they say about you? What do they text their partner about you? Like, those things have to be known from the inside out. Because if they're not, then we're just driving a car with no GPS. We're just driving blind, right? And so I think it's different for everybody, but it's the same for everybody, because if we don't punch into GPS, we can't get there. So we have to know what we want to feel like and who we want to become. And then the details from that can be super fun and unique and kind of exciting to explore.
Awesome. And Jill, like, with him saying that, what are some of the things that you really learned that you've taken away with you and has really helped you on the court?
No pressure.
What did Dayne do good at?
Why was I such an incredible teacher? Tell everyone.
Yes.
So I think that for me, this is really funny. One of the disagreements we used to have is I would call myself perfectionistic, and he believed that was a way of complimenting myself, of being like, I think that I do everything, that I have to do everything so well. But for me, perfectionism was like very self-limiting, in that I really couldn't, I had a very low tolerance for errors. And so one of the best parts about pickleball is that, like, you're guaranteed to make bazillions of them every time that you step on the court. And so he worked with me a lot, like ad nauseum, at developing more resilience around when I made mistakes. And So one of the things that helped me in terms of just like your question was, is there anything that all of us could do, is he taught me how to have kind of a reset routine after an error, like how to let an error go in the moment, just through having a fixed routine that I would do on the court. Like, so like kind of a physical cue, like a mantra, like just a practice that I would do. And that was really helpful for me, and kind of reframing that like an error is just an error until you give that error meaning. Like a miss is just a miss until you make it into like, oh my gosh, I don't want that to happen again, or until you give it bigger significance. So I think that helped me a lot. I mean, it's a process for me. It reminds me of like uncoiling a hose that's sat in the sun for a long day. It's like you unwind it and it snaps back, and then you unwind it again and it snaps back a little bit less. And it's like, this takes a ton of time. Like he talks about it as like the slow drip. And so I think the other part maybe was that I'm a pretty impatient person, and I want results like,
Sorry.
I want results like now. I want results yesterday. I'm used to being able to like throw myself into it, work really hard, and see things happen pretty quickly. And that's just not how like changing a mindset works. And so I think the thing that he did a lot was normalize how difficult it was, how slow it was, and that even if I couldn't see progress in the short term, that it was happening. So kind of frequently encouraging me to zoom out rather than focus on a week by week, day by day, how it feels on the court, because some days it still feels really tough. And then, but then he helps me kind of look back over a year, like, but what did it feel like a year ago? And so just a lot of it was normalizing my experience, like taking away this idea of what the process should look like, how fast it should go, like whether I was progressing at the same rate as the person next to me, all of these things that I can kind of in my head, I could get wrapped around the axle without having somebody kind of give me perspective and say like, this is normal and it is hard and it will take time, but you're getting better at it.
And I think a big thing too, just kind of with normalizing things, social media is so hard. I mean, with everything, but also just with comparing yourself. Like, me and so might have started at the same time, and now they're so much better. And it's like you have this, like, I feel like that's a huge part mentally too with this sport, is just like comparing yourself with other people. Is that something you see a lot of people struggle with?
Yeah, it is tough, right? And that's such a difficult question when you ask, how do I not compare myself? It's really brutal. There's no one answer, although it does. It starts maybe at self-awareness, right? And then it kind of bleeds into you'll compare yourself less and less with the more belief and confidence that you grow within. And that's going to happen by doing these things and by thinking like this. So it's all connected, right? There's no way that hey, just don't compare, right? I mean,
right.
we're all on different paths, right? And we're all unique. Nobody's the same. Nobody's timetable is the same, right? And again, which is why I've always said that this book will be successful because of her, not me, right? Because of her, because she's showing that, as she just said, right? It's normal to struggle. It's totally normal to go through what I'm going through. And I know you are, and I know you are, and I know you are. And so I think that will help the process a little bit, right? Like to look around and say, oh my gosh, like she struggled just like I was struggling. Maybe we're closer in our past than I think. And maybe I shouldn't compare as much as I do, but it is a tough one, right? Social media does make us, where people are taking pictures in front of their Lamborghinis that aren't even theirs and saying, the whole process of that, right? And I'm a success when you haven't worked at all, right? So it's very easy to fall into that trap.
Definitely. And just obviously you guys have had great advice, but I mean, this book, it's so cool. It's like sharing a year and a half of a relationship between a coach and a pickleball player. And what was it like though, like the whole writing process of creating this book?
It was so like we got along so well. Like this was the most
seamless.
And I mean, you talk about rainbows and Skittles, Caitlin. Like this was so fun. Oh my god,
the highlight reel.
I mean, no, you go.
No,
My ribs. My ribs.
So, like, one of my favorite parts actually of the trajectory of the book was that it took, almost like I like to find pickleball analogies for everything, obviously.
Yes.
And it
Yes.
reminds me a lot of, which like almost no one in my house appreciates. I'm like, well, that's just like on the pickleball court. But so it reminded me a lot of actually finding chemistry and connection with a pickleball partner. Is that like we had, it was clear that we had like a chemistry and working together in the way we thought, the things that interested us. And then so that was a really great starting point. But then it took time to figure out our communication styles and which are a little bit different. And so kind of where I think that we had the breakthrough was actually when we were writing our chapter on partnerships. So like we have a chapter on like how to pick and become a good partner. And it was in talking about that I really started to understand better how to communicate with Dayne. And I think he started to understand how better to communicate with.
Oh, I mean, yes. Yes. Sorry. Yes.
And so like our writing process evolved over time in how we did it and how we shared responsibilities and the editing process and everything. But it wasn't easy for sure the whole way along. Like we always had a good time, but it reminds me a lot of what happens on the court is if you have enough chemistry and complementary skill sets and then you work at it and you talk and you keep talking, that like you can become a better and better partnership. But that like it's rare that it just all falls into place on the first time. So that's what do you think?
I mean, I don't like her very much at all. That's where I am. No, I mean, it was a process, right? Like, she didn't talk to me for like 3 weeks because I was being an a-hole. It's just like, that is normal.
I love the honesty. That's why the book's going to be so great.
It's a process. It's like anything, right? It's a process. But we found it. I still don't.
I was going to ask, like, it is a process. How long did it take you to write this book?
Forever. Well, the writing actually, so I feel like my biggest learning curve was that, neither of us have written a book before. I've always loved writing. I have been shocked to find out that the writing was the easiest part about the whole thing. And so the writing itself took a little less than a year. But then like writing a book is like, I think of it now as like a 3-part act. There's like the writing, there's like the business of publishing and figuring out how you want to do that. And then there's the launching. And I like part 1. And I don't like to say negative things, so I'll refrain from talking about parts 2 and 3.
The other 2.
Took a really long time. So in total, maybe a little less, will come in like right under 2 years. Like soup to nuts.
And where can people find this book? Like, will it be in bookstores, online?
So we'll be publishing, you'll be able to find it on Amazon. And then we'll also be kind of hopefully trotting the book out around at different pickleball tournaments and locales, but it will be available on Amazon.
Yeah. And we're gonna, I get message to come out around the country and just do clinics, just regular clinics. And it's hard for me to leave because I have such an awesome home base, right? So leaving, it's very difficult. I would have to cancel days here, but I think we're going to also take it, around the country too, and do clinics specifically on these topics and help people kind of understand, kind of try to help them implement it from reading it into daily action. And so Jill and I are also going to do that. And thank goodness she's going to be there because I just don't know what I'm doing without it.
No, that's an awesome part to implement to a clinic, because most people, they just expect to play and like learn great skills, but to learn the mental side of things. I was going to ask, do you guys currently teach and do workshops together, or is this like a new little journey you guys are starting?
Well, we haven't yet because I don't like her. So I try to distance as much as I can. but this book is forcing us to come together and do this. No, we haven't in the past, but we're definitely looking forward to it more. And again, what I was trying to say earlier is it's really going to be important to have her at all of these workshops and clinics, because the Q&A that she can only answer, right? I can only give, this is, the big picture of the mental performance stuff, but she can again relate it to the amateur and pro right there on the spot. This is what I dealt with. This is what I felt. This is what I still feel. And this is how I kind of tried to override it. So I think it's such an important piece. And again, it just hasn't been done before. Right. And I just think it's kind of unique.
Well, and I think that's what's so great too. It is so new, and like all these new, ideas are evolving. So for you both to get on it before anyone else is awesome. And I'm going to put you both on the spot, but I want like a little elevator pitch as to why someone like myself, trying to up my game from both perspectives, from the player perspective and the coach, why should someone like myself read your book?
She's smarter, so I'll let her go first.
Let's see.
I know that's a hard question. It's hard.
Well, if I were to try to put myself in the shoes of somebody, I've read the book now about 726 times, but if I were to put myself in the position of having never read the book, I would say, one of the things that I think is helpful is that Dayne posts a ton of stuff on social media that's really valuable. And this takes a lot of it and distills it down. And then for me personally, as a player, when I would read some of the things that he wrote, especially in the earlier stages for me, it was so high level that I was like, yes, but wait, like here are the 26 questions that I have about what he's saying. And so while a lot of his thoughts are kind of available, on social media, I think the book is valuable because in addition to getting the high level advice that he's giving, you're getting the perspective of somebody who maybe it doesn't intuitively make sense to, and asks a lot of questions and asks maybe the follow-up questions that the reader is having of like, wait, but how do I do that? Makes sense, but how do I do it? Or that doesn't make sense at all. Or is that applicable to me? So I think that the book kind of takes a lot of really great information that is out there, but makes it more digestible and relatable to somebody, especially who maybe isn't a professional athlete, or who doesn't have a deep competitive background. Okay, do better.
Yeah. Dayne, you're up.
Like always. And listen, when you read, to be honest, when you read my book and you read her, do better. That's all I've ever done with you. I think it's an important read because I think there's so much content, so much information on the physical, right? And on all sports, right? There's so much information. You can Google and YouTube anything, some really good, some not so good, but the physical is out there, right? And there just isn't enough on the mental pieces of this. And like Jill said, we take pretty deep dives, right? And it is very high level, but again, it's a high level that can be digested for 3 5s and 7 0s, right? We have professionals, top professionals, Matt Wright, that have read the book and they can pick and choose what he wants and what resonates with him. And then the 4-0 player can also pick and choose what resonates with her. And I think it covers the whole gamut based on your individual needs. But again, the mental performance, I think, and I say it as much as I possibly humanly can, like your physical doesn't act by itself. Like it doesn't matter how much you drill. Muscle memory will not respond in stress unless you have a mental memory along with it, right? You can't just be mentally strong and never drill. But I think players just drill and play rec and just study video, like study themselves and break down mechanics, but they never tap into what's going on upstairs. I mean, the pros now slowly, right? They're drilling a lot more now. They're hiring physical trainers now because that's kind of accepted. So they do all of that. But how many of them are really taking deep dives into the mental game? Not very many, because their belief is if I do all the things physically, I'll just become mentally strong. And that's just not true. right? Tiger Woods, Kobe. I mean, they put a huge emphasis, Tom Brady, on Ben Johns, on their mental game. Like, it's because of their mental game that they're becoming great. Like, just on the pickleball, I know I talk a lot, but I get very excited. Ben Johns, you can go take a break. You want to know? Ben Johns, Ben, not because of his physical talent. There are a ton of talented players. I would even say there are more talented players than Ben today, but his mental game is just so next level. It's not even close. Number 2 isn't even close to where Ben is, right? And Colin, same thing. Like, physically, Colin's solid, but he's by far not the most talented, but mentally the dude's a monster also. And on and on. Anna Lee the same way. Anna Bright, like if you just look at the top players in any sport we talk about, there's no chance the top players are just physically gifted. So
yes,
that's why. Plus my parts just
I always said that I think mental toughness is way more important, like you said, than physical toughness, because I know people in my high school, they were like the best athletes. I call them like practice players because they crush it in practice. But then if we're in a game like basketball, we're down by 2 with 30 seconds to go. It's like, who's going to be mentally tough and be able to handle that pressure? I feel like that is so important. And that is what, Ben Johns and Anna Lee Waters, they're so great at, and that's what sets them apart and why they win all the championships.
By far. It's not even close,
yeah.
Right? That's the answer. But it takes a special, it's a skill. So you have to know, you have to know how to teach it and coach it. It can't just be a stock, see it, believe it, achieve it thing, but it also needs to be trained more than your physical, more. Because the mind is going to default to the negative if you don't override it and train it to focus on the positive intentions behind your physical acts.
Definitely. Well, Thank you so much, Dayne, Jill, for joining us. Pickleball Mindset, it will be out in April. Everybody better look out for it and stay tuned to see who will join us in the kitchen next time.